Begins by showing our protagonist Zoe, struggling as he drags a massive, heavy piece of monster remains on his back, his teeth clenched in exertion. He isn't alone. Others are laboring just as hard, hauling pieces of these colossal monster corpses. The setting is a ruined town, clearly devastated by these creatures. To heighten the peril, the sun casts a reddish glow over the streets. Lying there on the pavement is a giant dead creature, its mouth agape, its tongue lolling, exposing rows of sharp teeth. It appears to be a monstrous insect. An overseer bellows, "If we don't finish moving before dark, we won't get dinner." The workers continue disassembling the carcass. Some, already weakened, collapse, only to be rudely kicked and ordered on by the overseer, who decrees that no one stops until they perish. The men struggle to rise, murmuring apologies. Zoe bends under the weight, fighting to keep from falling. Then an overseer shouts from behind, "Zoe, you trash! What are you dawdling for? Move it quickly!" Gritting his teeth, Zoe obeys. His eyes reveal both determination and sorrow. He introduces himself quietly. "My name is Zoe, just an ordinary person trying to survive in this hell." Before 2026, these cities were peaceful, with blue skies and towering buildings. But then, a catastrophe beyond scientific explanation struck. Giant monsters erupted from the ground. Centipedes and other insect-like horrors emerged. Colossal as skyscrapers, humanity was besieged by endless hordes of monsters that transformed the Earth into a deadly labyrinth. This nightmare came to be known as the Abyss. Countless chasms were carved out, connecting to other worlds. Within these deep caverns, monsters abound, much like high-difficulty dungeons in a video game. The Abyss also emits an enigmatic radiation, empowering a few individuals. Those granted such power are called Awakeners, while the weak, unable to unlock their abilities, are condemned to perform the dirtiest, most exhausting labor, such as hauling and sweeping up the remains of monsters just to secure a meager meal at the end of the world. Joe-E and a group of men lug enormous chunks of monster remains as someone directs them on where to carry the load. The workers, using the last of their strength, load parts of the carcass into a truck. Exhausted and gasping for breath, Joe-E and another worker collapse before the truck. Catching his breath, Joe-E notices an overseer standing over him. The man slaps Joe-E hard across the cheek, and with a cold glare barks, "Stop wasting time." "Don't act pitiful in front of me." His voice drips with irritation. Zoe lowers his head, cradling his face in silence. After a moment, he lifts his head, his reddened cheek still stinging, and silently asks, "Does my face hurt your hand?" The commander sneers. "Trash. Can you do it or not? If you can't, then get lost." Zoe musters his resolve and responds affirmatively. The commander orders, "Carry all the corpses by dark. No food if you don't finish." Zoe promises, "Don't worry, I'll finish the mission." Suddenly, the ground trembles near a chunk of the monster's corpse. Zoe, confused, wonders, "What's going on? An earthquake?" Then he is stunned as a giant centipede monster bursts forth from the ground, likely lured by the odor of decay. The centipede opens its enormous mouth wide, as if ready to perform an obscene act on any giant carcass it encounters. Joey's eyes widen in horror. He realizes this might be the end. The commander, witnessing the unfolding chaos, stands in shock at the sight of a living monster. Then the centipede emits a deafening screech, and panic ensues as everyone flees, screaming in terror while the giant creature thrashes about. Zhao Yi runs as fast as he can, but the overseer, noticing that he is lagging behind, refuses to let him escape, for if he continues, he might be devoured. The overseer rushes after him and abruptly fires a shot at Zhao Yi's leg. A searing pain flares as Zhao Yi looks down in horror at his injured leg, and then glances back to see the overseer firing. Zhao Yi collapses to the ground, screaming, My leg!" Blood spurts from the wound. The overseer marches past him, laughing heartily. "Trash like you are kept for times like this." Lying on the ground, Zhao Yi realizes the overseer used him as bait to buy them time to escape. Shivering in pain, he wonders, "Why? I just want to live. Why is it so hard?" A bleak thought flashes. A weakling like him with no abilities is doomed to be eliminated. Tears well in his eyes and he suddenly feels something crawling on his hand. A cockroach. He muses bitterly. In a world like this, maybe only cockroaches can live comfortably. They can eat anything. I, on the other hand, must scurry around searching for scraps. Their vitality is unmatched. Even the abyss's radiation cannot kill them. He silently wishes, "In my next life." At that moment, the centipede monster approaches, its mouth agape and poised to strike. In his final moments, Zhou Yi murmurs, "If I can become a cockroach, it wouldn't be so bad." Just as it seems his end is near, something extraordinary happens. A system notification flashes. Human body reconstruction started. Superpower evolution system activated. An unknown body modification system initiates. The first reconstruction fails. Then the second, third, and fourth all fail. But the process continues until the 16 millionth attempt, when finally, the body modification succeeds. The scene shifts to a garbage area. A strange rustling in a dark alley creates an eerie atmosphere. Zui regains consciousness, his mind clouded with confusion. He wonders if he is dead. He attempts to raise his arm and is startled to feel his hand moving, but when he looks he sees limbs that clearly do not belong to a human. Ahead, he spots a mirror and moves closer to inspect himself. As he gazes at his reflection, he notices something shocking. It's a cockroach. He panics, his eyes and mouth widening in disbelief as the realization dawns. In a frenzy, he screams. The protagonist is surprised to realize that he has an extra pair of arms. However, moving them does not cause him any discomfort, as if he had always had them. He notices that the only thing causing him discomfort is the new muscle mass on his back, which appears to be a new pair of wings that he's not used to yet. As he tries to move them, he suddenly starts flying. Before he can make sense of the situation, he finds himself airborne, frantically screaming and trying to stop it. But he fails. He crashes into a wall and falls. He thinks, just by slightly controlling the back muscle, my wing got activated and now they are out. I don't know how to retract them. Frustrated with his situation, he exclaims that if he had known his dying wish would come true, he would have chosen something else. Suddenly, a shining system appears before him, calling him an insatiable human being and rebuking him for mocking the feelings of the cockroach god. The creature goes on to say that in the last 5,000 years he is the first human who prayed to him, who begged the cockroach god for strength. However, he is now disappointed in Joey's new state of mind. He had personally come here to grant him superpowers, but now he is disappointed. Joey realizes that this is the same system he used to read about in novels and gets extremely excited. In a burst of emotion, he changes his stance and calls the system brother and even father, apologizing for his words. However, the cockroach god does not respond to his pleas and simply disappears, leaving Joey alone with his new body. A message appears on the system screen. The system has been closed, as you have been hated by the cockroach god. The protagonist looks at this in utter shock. He realizes that he seems to have angered the cockroach god directly, and is now left without a system. Several days pass, during which he desperately tries to call up the system, but to no avail. He shouts, "The system!" but there is no answer. So, in every attempt, the system still does not respond. He begins to realize that his situation is getting worse. Eventually, he realizes that he can now understand cockroach language. He hears the other cockroaches whispering, not knowing what to do with him. One evening, he contemplates his new life again. Even though he once wished to become a cockroach himself, he can't shake the feeling that he looks disgusting. Soon, he notices other cockroaches gathering in a group and eating something with gusto, and he looks at it with disgust, and then realizes that it is their own feces. One of the cockroaches happily declares that poop should be eaten while it's hot, and calls him to join the feast. Terrified, he screams for the cockroach to stay away, not wanting to participate in this madness. However, the cockroach doesn't give up, holding out a piece to him. Joey throws himself at it in panic, repeating that he doesn't want it. The cockroach tries to justify itself to its fellows, but one of them, with obvious resentment, claims that it was shot in the heart. The protagonist is not interested in apologizing. He points out that his offender's breath smells like shit and advises him not to open his mouth before speaking. Gradually, he begins to realize that his human genes have made him stronger, but at the same time, he is frightened by his new tastes. He even starts to like the smell of slop. He realizes that if he doesn't find normal food, he might one day wake up with his face buried in a pile of waste. As he surveys the dump, he remembers that thick plastic bags block cockroach receptors. But his human genes are still active. Oh, and finds a sealed package of egg yolk pie. True, it expired 3 years ago, but despite this, he considers the find a real jackpot. The system reports that the pie contains 385 calories and is thankfully still edible. His first instinct is to be horrified. 3 years past the expiration date. How can you eat that? But hunger takes over. Despite its disgusting appearance, the pie smells quite appetizing. Joey decides that this is a real delicacy for cockroaches, and as he gorges himself on chunks of stale food, he rejoices in his transformation. 10 days later, Joey sits with another cockroach, pondering his new existence. The cockroach deity never appeared, and he comes to the stark realization that his dream was a mistake. Life as a cockroach is far more complex than he ever imagined. Completely unsuitable for a human soul. At one point, Joey even contemplates ending his miserable existence. Though nothing seems capable of killing him, not poison, not water, nor any fall, in a desperate bid for release, he considers seeking out a natural predator of cockroaches to bring about his end. However, recalling the incident with a monstrous creature that nearly devoured him, fear stops him from pursuing that path, and he resolves instead to cling to life. After all, cockroaches are social creatures. Joey reasons that if he can rise to lead the colony and become their king, his odds of survival would improve dramatically. He no longer laments the lost connection with the cockroach god because, armed with his human knowledge, he believes he can carve out a decent life. He begins by complimenting a fellow cockroach, admiring its sturdy exoskeleton, and even offers a gesture of friendship. But the corpulent cockroach scoffs at his overtures, declaring that Joey's offer is worthless, as he wouldn't eat even a scrap of hot refuse. In that moment, Joey realizes that personal comfort means little when his ambition is to command the cockroach horde. With renewed determination, he resolves to prove his own strength. On the 20th day of his rebirth, his chance finally arrives. the more seasoned cockroaches convene, deciding to relocate to an area abundant with food. Although the elders suggest that some may remain behind, doing so would only leave them vulnerable to their natural enemies. One particularly corpulent cockroach grumbles about his inability to find nourishment, lamenting that he can no longer stomach his current lot. Joey listens to his ramblings and thinks that the fat one is the worst of the lot, content to wait for the next dump of refuse, rather than scavenge for sustenance. The portly cockroach is too frightened to leave, and Joey is incensed by this weakness. He reflects that cockroaches are inherently homebodies, intimidated by the unknown. Meanwhile, the adult members of the colony call for a volunteer to scout the path ahead. When silence falls, Joey decides he will not stand aside. After all, he's not content with subsisting on scraps. Unexpectedly, the cockroach deity materializes to contact him, declaring that if Joey accepts this scouting mission, the deity might consider forgiving his past regressions. Without hesitation, Joey raises his hand resolutely and proclaims that he will lead them all. The corpulent cockroach is impressed, exclaiming that Joey is remarkably brave. Ecstatic, Joey feels as though his secret advantage has returned. Soon, Joey and the fat cockroach arrive at the new location. Their mission is to cross a fence that divides the settlement from a new, untapped territory. The crossing is quiet enough for Joey to manage alone, yet the corpulent cockroach protests, claiming ignorance about the path. It turns out that when a settlement runs out of food, the older cockroaches dispatch the young ones to explore beyond. However, this new world is teeming with natural predators, so the reconnaissance squad suffers a high casualty rate. Many are wiped out before they can report back. Joey is struck with fear. The scouting mission seems almost suicidal. He even wonders if the cockroach deity orchestrated this fate to punish him upon his eventual demise. Determined, Joey insists they must move on. Confident in his ability to provide sustenance for the colony, the corpulent cockroach begins to weep, overcome by the prospect of leaving behind what little is familiar. Suddenly, an adult cockroach appears behind Joey. Confused by their intended destination, since the area beyond the fence is littered with monster carcasses, Joey realizes that whoever reaches it first will claim its resources. Shock overtakes him as he contemplates whether cockroaches have evolved to consume alien monsters. This revelation seems miraculous. Food shortages might finally be a thing of the past. In any case, Joey declares that he has decided to go on a diet, leaving the others to feast without him. At that moment, the adult cockroach hoists Joey up like a tiny insect. "Listen," the elder warns. "If we don't scout the path quickly, we'll become dinner ourselves." Joey grits his teeth and gasps, realizing that even in rebirth he cannot escape the law of the jungle. He recalls his former troop, weak, unsupported, and sent out in search of food. To the strong, they were nothing more than a group of foolish, doomed individuals. The commander had once remarked that searching for food was the ultimate test of survival. The adult cockroach echoes this sentiment, insisting that they should be grateful for the chance to live. With that, he tosses Joey to the ground, and soon the adult cockroach lands squarely on Joey's face. Under the relentless pressure of his new existence, the guy realized he couldn't simply survive by being a cockroach that eats everything. It wasn't enough to endure the apocalypse. Joey resolved to grow stronger. Soon, a band of tiny cockroaches set out on an exploratory mission, and Joey instructed his cockroach brethren to keep vigilant and press forward, alerting him immediately if any enemy appeared. Though he wasn't fond of having the corpulent cockroach trailing too closely, he understood that even cockroaches can be frightened. Gazing ahead, Oi noted something peculiar about the barrier before them. One of the elder cockroaches volunteered to chase them down, arguing that they couldn't let the maggots snatch the food first. The elder roaches surged ahead, prepared to fend off any intruders by devouring the larvae. Joey bristled with indignation. Mature cockroaches capable of flight seemed utterly forgetful. He scolded them as nothing more than lazy slackers. Then, something caught his eye. A massive red eye glaring from the distance. Horrified, he realized that what he had presumed were mere rocks were in fact disguised toads, using stony camouflage to lure in their prey. As the corpulent cockroach wailed in despair, one of these toads struck with its sticky tongue. Joey shouted for everyone to flee, but the toads proved too formidable, and many of the smaller cockroaches scattered in panic, with one brave soul falling in battle. The system flashed a warning. An enemy had been detected, a mutant toad. Although these mutant toads were stronger than ordinary ones, they had a critical weakness. They could not detect stationary prey. The fat cockroach cried out in fear, but Joey ordered it to remain absolutely still, knowing that immobility rendered the toads blind. In the midst of the chaos, the cockroach deity presented Joey with a choice. One option was to mark a safe exit route, while the other required him to rescue another cockroach, thus earning his first loyal subject on his path to becoming the cockroach king. The offer was repeated several times, emphasizing the chance to secure a subordinate. Joey was baffled. How could one ascend to cockroach royalty if one perished? He then turned his attention to the corpulent cockroach beside him, recalling a past moment of betrayal when he had longed for someone to come to his rescue. With time pressing, he took the fat cockroach's hand and lifted him, driven by desperate hope, even teasing that his companion needed to lose some weight. The portly cockroach mumbled affectionate words, but Joey snapped, telling him to shut up because his foul breath was unbearable. Before either could process the moment further, a colossal toad suddenly opened its gaping maw, poised to swallow them both. At that critical juncture, Joey hurled the fat cockroach forward. The last thing the corpulent creature saw was Joey vanishing into the vile toad's jaws. One bite, and it was over. This selfless act allowed Joey to pass the cockroach deity's trial. Deeply moved, the deity granted him access to a new system. The ability absorption of all things was activated. New powers emerged, such as a sticky tongue and the ability to secrete acid mutant toad slime, while the mutant toad's head exploded in a burst of green blood. As a special bonus, Joey underwent a dramatic transformation. No longer merely a common cockroach, he had become an enviable specimen, a striking figure among his kind. Bursting forth from the remains of the mutant toad, he joyfully proclaimed his return. The cockroach deity, impressed that Joey had retained kindness and justice even in such dire straits, declared him worthy to follow its path. Joey, however, was still perplexed. Did he truly have to remain a cockroach? The deity explained simply. Cockroaches are immortal by nature, and now that Joey possessed immortality, his appearance was of little consequence. Joey, not one for flowery language, asked for a simpler explanation. In a brief, heated exchange, the cockroach god clarified that Joey now wielded the power of immortality, even in his human form. Overjoyed by this revelation, Joey realized he wouldn't be forced to revert to a mere insect forever. Meanwhile, the cockroach deity felt relief that Joey had not forsaken his fellow beings despite his transformation. Suddenly, Joey sensed something amiss. The cockroach god discovered that the chubby cockroach beneath his foot was in a terrible state. The deity was visibly displeased. He had inadvertently crushed the very partner he had just saved. In the end, Joey was left as the sole survivor. Joey realized that he had turned human since he had saved the fat man. Would he really become a cockroach again since he killed the fat man? With the cockroach god looming behind him, Joey knew that his survival now depended on his acting skills. The moment the cockroach god moved to intervene, Joey began to weep. He was overwhelmed that the god had let him live. He lifted the fatty with all his strength, even as the corpulent creature lay sprawled on the ground. In that desperate moment, he resolved that fate must take his fatty brother along, for he could not live without him. Noticing the deep bond between them, the cockroach god declared that the fat man was not dead, and indeed he would never truly die, for he was the protector. As long as Joey lived, the fat man could be resurrected, the god explained. Joey would need to slay mutant monsters to gather the energy required to restore his companion. At that moment, Joey felt as if he were already dead. Meanwhile, a toad watched him intently. The toad couldn't make sense of the hairy appendage dangling in front of Joey. Was it a hairy caterpillar? Before the toad could decide, it rushed forward to attack the strange dangling mass. Grabbing it, the creature sent Joey into a frenzy of screams. Abruptly, Joey leapt up and, despite the toad's poisonous slime, seized the toads. He turned to the cockroach god, exclaiming that he couldn't even handle small toads. The cockroach god was baffled. Is Joey a moron? It wondered. It insisted that toads fight using their abilities, and questioned why Joey hadn't harnessed his own. According to legend, consuming a toad would bestow its abilities in antibodies. The more monsters he ate, the stronger he would become. You have to eat anything to become a god, they said. Determined, Joey attempted to roast the toad himself. The cockroach god simply forced another toad into his mouth. Driven by an intense thirst for strength, Joey tasted the toad only to be repulsed by a vile flavor. He began to vomit, unable to tolerate the taste. The cockroach god warned that if he did not comply, he would be devoured by the encircling toads. Within seconds, Joey was completely surrounded. In that moment, he realized that despite all his efforts to survive, he now couldn't even consume an ordinary toad. His mouth filled with meat, yet his revulsion persisted. Nonetheless, Joey did what was necessary. The system announced that after absorption, new biological abilities had been detected. Acid slime, frog-like jumping, and enhanced muscle stretching were now his, and he dispatched the toads one by one with unexpected grace. Growing bored from his invincibility, Joey suddenly found himself blinded by a bright light. He noticed a group of people who, based on their crude remarks, apparently considered him a naked pervert. How else could he explain his toad antics? Overjoyed, he wondered if his comrades had truly come to rescue him. Standing in the middle of a wasteland, Joey saw massive military trucks lined up before him, with armed soldiers peering out. He had not anticipated such an encounter. Recognizing the emblem on an armored vehicle, he whispered in panic as memories from his past life flooded back. This organization was comprised of elite fighters who had once protected humanity from monsters during the apocalypse. Their duty was to combat the beasts of Earth in the abyss, maintain order, and protect the people in the cities. The return of under their guardianship meant that seeing them here was a dire omen. "Comrades, have you come to save me?" Joey wondered. In the next instant, his body was pierced by numerous arrows. Stunned, he stared at the projectiles, realizing that rescue was the very last thing they intended to do, and he felt it sing. He collapsed to the ground as the soldiers kept their weapons at the ready, ensuring that their target was fully neutralized. 3 heavily armored fighters advanced toward his prostrate body. Despite his condition, Joey weakly raised a hand in protest, though his trembling form gave him away. At that moment, the system activated, informing him that he now had full control over every muscle in his body. Noticing that his target was still moving, the squad leader bellowed, "Target is dangerous. Everyone assume a fighting stance." Joey tried to negotiate. "Hey, wait, I'm not a criminal. Let me explain myself." His words fell on deaf ears. One soldier barked an order. "Fire on target." Suddenly, a woman's voice cut through the chaos. "Take him alive!" Furious, Joey shouted, "What the hell is this? Can't you understand human language?" Realizing that negotiation was futile, the motorcyclists closed in, forming a tight circle as they prepared to attack. One of the fighters hurled an energy whip that ensnared his body. Joey found himself suspended between moving motorcycles, his body stretched tight like a cable. Exhausted, he screamed, realizing he was trapped. At that moment, the system announced a new ability: Acid Slime, capable of corroding any material. As his attackers attempted to restrain him further, Joey instinctively activated the slime, breaking free of his bonds. A purple-hazed woman observed this display with keen interest. She could tell he had awakened. Joey launched himself into a counterattack, but one of the fighters caught up and landed a solid body blow. The acid on Joey's body began to decompose, causing him to lose his grip. The squad stared in amazement as one soldier inspected the acid residue on his arm with interest. Before long, the same warrior leapt on top of him, swinging a powerful fist. Joey managed to recoil, but the assault was incredibly swift and forceful. Another opponent appeared with the intent of knocking him out, yet Joey deftly dodged the attack. In despair, he cried out, "Where are the cheats already?" At that moment, the system activated his ability once more. Suddenly, Joey charged forward at an incredible speed. Upon landing, he was surprised but pleased that the power had worked. Glancing back at his pursuers, he grinned smugly, confident he had a chance to escape. As he leapt, he taunted, "Still want to catch me?" But his expression quickly shifted when mid-air his leg was yanked sharply by a light whip, throwing him off balance. Eileen smirked. "So? Thought you could run away from me?" She effortlessly tossed him aside, and he screamed helplessly as he landed hard on the ground. In the next instant, her whips completely entangled him, restraining his movements, and panic surged as he realized he was trapped again. Joey found himself completely bound by purple threads. Eileen then turned to a nearby soldier and asked for his number. The soldier replied that he was the 13th. Without giving Joey a moment to process, the woman sped off on her motorcycle, dragging him along. Joey desperately struggled to break free, screaming for mercy, but the vehicle continued on, heedless of his pleas. Before long, they arrived at the base city, its massive walls protecting it, toward which the entire convoy was heading. One of the guards at the gate noticed Vice Captain Eileen's return and ordered the Redbird gate to be opened. Meanwhile, Eileen cautioned against opening the gate too wide, warning that monsters might exploit the gap to invade the city. With deft precision, she entered the fortress, while continuing to drag the unfortunate captive along. Inside, Joey was taken to the Elimination Squad prison, where his next fate awaited. Walking down a hallway in a striped prison jumpsuit, Joey attempted to joke, complaining that even after the apocalypse, it was still illegal to roam naked. Surprised, this prisoner was not only aware of what was happening but could actually speak, unlike the other dozen. Vice Captain Eileen then warned everyone not to take the situation lightly. She reported that over the course of 1 week, authorities had discovered 12 strange individuals who were completely naked, mute, and only laughing foolishly. She inspected their cells, their postures were unnatural, their gazes blank, and their movements resembled those of mindless creatures. "They aren't even human," she admitted. One female scientist suggested simply executing them to save time, while another argued that if they began killing beings based on low intelligence or odd appearances, they would soon be no better than the monsters outside the city walls. Joey finally understood why he had been apprehended. He was arrested simply because he resembled those bizarre misfits. Shocked and panicked, he recalled hearing about genetic analysis and wondered, could they expose us through genetic profiling? Almost immediately, a system message appeared, questioning, "What is genetic analysis?" His eyes widened in terror as he realized his fate might be sealed. They escorted him into a dimly lit room where Vice Captain Eileen declared, "It doesn't matter if you're a pervert or resemble those creatures, you're spending the night here." A puzzled female scientist glanced at the surveillance feed and asked, "Did you move the others? The cells appear empty." In one cell, however, sat a bald man in prison garb, silent and brooding, which made Eileen's gaze fix on him with tension. Suddenly, one of the prisoners' heads began to swell unnaturally, ballooning like an overinflated toy. Eileen was utterly shocked. The young man nearby looked up in disbelief, and the women around him trembled. On exclaimed, "They're flying through the ceiling." Gripped by terror, the man shouted, "What the hell is that?" As if in response, the grotesquely distorted heads descended from above, their faces twisted into ghastly grimaces. Someone below screamed in horror at the utterly abnormal sight. One of these airborne heads smirked eerily, its dead eyes fixed downward. In this nightmarish scene, the prisoners' faces became even more deformed. The man with the shaved head suddenly began to transform. His face stretched, and his eyes glowed with a menacing light. He grinned in a terrifying manner. In the next instant, his face exploded into a horrifying amalgam of eyes and teeth. No longer human, he had become the very embodiment of a nightmare. The woman and the young man spun around in panic. The monstrous creature then extended long crimson tentacles, lashing out at them with alarming speed. Panicking, the young man tried to evade the attack, but the creature soon assumed its full, monstrous form, an ugly, heavily muscled body with a sinister grin and multiple eyes. The purple-haired woman immediately assumed a defensive stance, preparing to fend off the assault as one of the tentacles lunged toward her. Confidently, she declared that the true nature of the monster was now evident. None of the scientists, however, was horrified to notice that her body was being covered in grotesque spots. As the spots spread, her skin distorted into a deformed mass, and she screamed in agony. A young man, too, showed signs of infection, but he kept his composure, realizing that escape was his only option. Suddenly, an inner face flashed a warning about parasitism, urging him to act quickly or risk transforming into a zombie. The monster then issued a chilling threat, proclaiming its desire for her body, further heightening the terror of the situation. Eileen was taken aback. She had never encountered a creature that could speak, let alone one of such a bizarre species. The beast then seized the bodies of the female scientists, using them as expendable cannon fodder in its assault against Eileen. In response, the purple-hazed woman activated her power, weaving energy threads to deflect the attack. With agile precision, she vaulted into the air, showcasing both strength and grace. Eileen soon realized how difficult it was to counter these parasitic monstrosities. They were still human and therefore nearly unkillable. Moreover, she lacked the necessary magic crystals, rendering her abilities almost ineffective in this dire situation. Her attention was drawn to a scalpel resting on a bedside table. Seizing the opportunity, she picked it up and hurled it at the creature. However, the wretched beast was using the two female scientists as shields. Recognizing this, Eileen quickly retracted her energy threads. The scalpel halted just shy of the girl's face. Any closer and plastic surgery would have been required. The creature, meanwhile, continued to taunt them by clutching Zhou in its tentacles. Zhou, already on edge and without time to consume the growths before they re-emerged, was urged by the cockroach deity to cease his chatter and swallow quickly. The system notified him that parasitic spores had been ingested, and that his resistance to such parasites was now developing, rising from 10% to 46% in a short span. Listening to the taunts of the monstrous creature, Eileen declared that it was insulting her. With renewed determination, she flung the scalpel once more, retorting that only a pathetic coward would hide behind hostages. In this chaotic confrontation, Zhou found himself caught between the relentless assault of the mutant monster and the desperate efforts of his would-be rescuers, with his fate and the fate of those around him hanging in the balance. The creature sneered at the girl's feeble counterattack, declaring that her assault was futile because she would only end up striking her comrade. Yet it seemed the girl had a backup plan. Her airborne blades abruptly shifted course and slammed into the monster's arms and back. Enraged, the beast roared in pain. It hadn't expected such a successful hit. Eileen speculated, but then, in the very areas where the blades had struck, began to experience a searing pain. The monster explained that by injuring her, it had transferred all the agony to the girls, while its own wounds were rapidly healing. Realizing the implications of this ability, Eileen grew increasingly unsettled. Without warning, the monster announced that the girl had finally been ensnared. Eileen looked at her hand in alarm as it began to glow with an ominous red light. Soon it lost all control and started to constrict her own arm, as if attempting to strangle its bearer. The beast taunted that she couldn't possibly overcome this challenge, since she couldn't eliminate the spores, and now she was entirely at its mercy. Yet, in a surprising twist, the monster's demeanor shifted, and the girl burst into a peculiar, echoing laugh. Eileen explained that she was fortunate enough to catch herself in time. She claimed that while others might fall prey to the infection, her webbing could manipulate more than just an enemy's body. With that resolve, she directed her energy threads to seize control of the infected arm. Faceting a scalpel to a thread, she carefully sliced at the areas afflicted by spores, halting further contamination. A wry grin spread across her face as she remarked on the unfortunate irony that the monster had been undone by its own tactics. The creature grudgingly conceded that she had broken free, though it warned that overusing this method would cause her to bleed out and soon be unable to fight. Moreover, should Eileen attempt to flee, the monster vowed to slaughter the other girls before escaping itself. Eileen retorted that the beast could scream all it wanted. She wasn't going to back down, no matter how much it pleaded. Meanwhile, Zhou continued to absorb the parasitic spores, as the monster lingered for days, puzzled by its inability to control him. Frustrated, it decided to eliminate Zhou once and for all, but at that very moment, Zhou shattered his shackles. Realizing he had no time to dodge the impending strike, he braced himself, as a purple web coiled rapidly around his body. In the next heartbeat, Eileen surged forward, pulling Zhou to safety and intercepting the monster's blow. The beast seemed unsettled by this interference, its confusion evident. Zhou collapsed to the ground, his gaze inadvertently drawn to Eileen's dark undergarments. In his dazed state, he silently thanked his goddess for saving him, believing he had witnessed nothing short of a miracle. Eileen, however, looked at him with disdain, gripping his clothes as she muttered whether he had always been such a pathetic pervert. Zhou sheepishly confirmed her suspicions, admitting he had indeed been that way all along. After a moment, Eileen released him and reached a decision. Since the monsters couldn't infect him, they had two options. One, they could perish together, or two, she could neutralize the threat and broadcast the news to the world. Zhou Yi, finding himself at a loss for words, suddenly stepped forward and proposed a third plan. Perplexed, Aileen inquired what this additional option might be. Zhou Yi declared that they should band together to utterly incapacitate the creature, reduce it to a vegetable, so to speak. Aileen was taken aback by his willingness to risk his life, and in that moment, Zhou Yi recalled the sting of his own abandonment, the very betrayal that had fueled his hatred for those who forsake their comrades. Those who leave their friends to be devoured by monsters, he proclaimed, are far worse than the beasts themselves. Aileen was surprised by Zhou Yi's resolve, though his confidence partly stemmed from the system's assurance that the monster's strength was largely due to its parasitic enhancements, meaning that normal attacks could prevail. With that knowledge, Zhou Yi believed he could eventually thrive in the monster-guarded territories. Still seething, the monster remained furious, regarding humans as inferior, scornful that even in battle they would resort to tactics designed to draw attention from the opposite sex. In a final, desperate surge, the creature attacked the pair with its virulent, infected tentacles. Realizing his own ineptitude in combat, Zhou Yi pleaded with Aileen to assume control of his body. He admitted he wasn't afraid of parasites, but clearly he lacked the prowess of a seasoned fighter, though he warned that even her intervention couldn't guarantee his safety. She activated her abilities, summoning threads that wrapped around Zhou Yi's body. The energy coursing through these threads accelerated his muscle movements, making them faster and more precise. With confidence, Aileen assumed control, directing him to attack. Under her guidance, Zhou Yi charged forward. The enemy taunted that his tentacles were unavoidable, and claimed that Zhou Yi would never break through his puppets. Without wasting a moment, Aileen bolstered Zhou Yi's strength, and he leapt into action as she orchestrated every move. In a graceful leap, Zhou Yi found himself above his foe, poised for the next attack. Aileen swiftly took command of Zhou Yi's body once more, and he dashed forward, ducking under the enemy's blows. The monster, taken aback by the sudden change, muttered in confusion that the adversary had become smarter. It soon dawned on him that Aileen was controlling Zhou Yi's every movement. Aileen smiled in satisfaction. Zhou Yi advanced rapidly, his fist raised to strike, gathering all his strength. However, the monster mocked him, insisting that its defenses were too robust. Undeterred, Zhou Yi unleashed a mighty blow. His system screen confirmed that his ability had activated. His body became enveloped in radiant light, and his muscle stretching and acid slime skills were triggered. With unstoppable energy, he rushed at the monster. The enemy began to decompose under the assault of acid slime, emitting a death scream as its flesh started to disintegrate. Aileen watched in astonishment, unaware that Zhou Yi possessed such formidable abilities. The acid continued to corrode the monster's body until, with one final devastating strike, he tore it apart. Zhou Yi's gaze hardened with cold confidence, a true fighter in his element. Yet the monster refused to yield, boasting that it could endure any damage and survive. Suddenly, its panic became evident as it noticed its wound wasn't healing. An impossibility, it thought. Glancing around, the monster spotted Aileen, seated next to two collapsed figures, and stared at her in shock. With a smug smile, Aileen announced that she had already eradicated its parasitic spores. Clutching a disgusting blood-covered object in her hand, she crushed it effortlessly and chuckled at the monster's pitiable state. The creature fell silent, its eyes widening in horror as it recognized that the situation had spiraled out of control. Then it opened its mouth, and bizarre sounds began to emanate from within. Soon the bloated head started to explode, unleashing a torrent of blood. Zhou Yi and Aileen stared in stunned amazement, initially unaware of the full extent of the monster's transformation. Zhou Yi couldn't fathom, was the creature really siphoning blood from corpses? As its body churned and transformed, an ominous eyeball emerged from its depth. Tension gripped both Aileen and Zhou Yi as they watched the blood bubble and coalesce into a new, sinister mass. The swirling, viscous substance gradually formed an even more dangerous entity, a massive creature made entirely of blood, with burning eyes and an aura of menace. The transformed monster let out a wild, piercing scream, announcing its true nature for the first time and daring them not to disappoint it. In a flash, it lunged to attack. It moved so fast that Aileen barely had time to react before it hurled itself at her. The next instant, she was forcefully thrown against a wall, the impact so severe that the metal surface sagged under the blow. Aileen crashed into the wall, a pained cry escaping her as the battle intensified. Horrified, Zhou Yi turned around, realizing that danger was escalating beyond measure. Aileen, panting heavily, with blood trickling from the corner of her lips, recognized that the enemy's power far exceeded their expectation. For a long, breathless moment she remained in shock, utterly, completely in shock. The monster wasted no time. It seized her and hurled her aside like a rag doll. The girl was flung through the air, colliding with walls at breakneck speed, yet the beast persisted, pursuing her relentlessly to complete its cruel work. She crashed to the ground, shattering tiles beneath her, her body battered and her mind clouded with agony. Slowly, the monster advanced, its predatory smile widening as it savored her helplessness. Suddenly, something struck the creature, forcing it to halt. It blinked in surprise. Who had dared to attack? Turning its gaze, the monster spotted a young man standing behind it. Panic surged through the newcomer as he realized the gravity of the situation, but it was too late to retreat. The beast lunged with wild speed, and the young man could only scream as a devastating blow sent him flying, blood spurting from his mouth. He crashed into a wall with a clatter that left a deep dent. An alarming message flashed on the screen. Danger, broken bones detected, internal organs compromised. Shortly after, the system reported, lethal damage detected. Then, unexpectedly, the immortality skill activated. The regeneration process began. His body healed rapidly, and his injuries faded away. His legs regained strength, and he slowly rose to his feet. Upon awakening, he screamed in terror, convinced that death was imminent. A warning from the cockroach god boomed. If you get hit again, I can't guarantee you'll recover. Zhao Yi lay pressed to the ground, realizing that the only way to survive was to play dead. He'd barely opened an eye as he watched the unfolding chaos, silently urging the girl to hold on. Her survival was crucial. The monster, exuding a menacing aura, approached while Zhao Yi remained motionless, hoping to be overlooked. Glancing disdainfully at his inert form, the beast suddenly flinched as a forceful blow struck it. A sound of impact echoed through the room. The girl had surged forward at breakneck speed, her attack aimed squarely at the monster's head, yet the creature reacted faster than anticipated, intercepting her leg to thwart the strike. Shocked, the girl could hardly believe her assault had been foiled. With a mocking smirk, the monster countered by hurling her aside in a burst of fury. With savage force, it slammed her back onto the floor, leaving deep cracks in its wake, then flung her upward toward the ceiling. Aileen was left bleeding and barely conscious, her condition dire as her legs lay shattered. Fortunately, she retained control of her arms. Zhou Yi watched helplessly, realizing that even the vice-captain of the elimination squad would be powerless against this foe. He wondered who, if anyone, could possibly rescue them. At that moment, a scholar called out to the young man, presenting a red crystal purported to unlock Aileen's hidden power. Without hesitation, Zui accepted the crystal, though he wasn't entirely sure how to utilize it, as the monster advanced on the girl. Just then, the cockroach god reappeared and instructed Zui that he could reach the girl using his muscle-stretching ability. According to the deity's calculations, his chance of success was a mere 10%, a dismal prospect. The god offered him a stark choice: risk the 10% chance, or do nothing and certainly perish. Gritting his teeth, Zhou Yi resolved to act. He rose, activating his muscle-stretching skill, charging toward the girl. Yet the monster reacted immediately to his movement. Its swift response reduced his odds further, down to 5%. With no alternative, Zhou Yi leapt into the fray. Finding himself above the monster's head, the cockroach god announced that the success rate was now a mere 1%, but for Zhou Yi, it felt as though victory was within reach. Suddenly, the monster clutched Zhou Yi's leg and seemed to wonder what he was up to. In an instant, any chance of success evaporated, as Zhou Yi was slammed into the ground by a swift, crushing motion. Lying there, wallowing on the floor, the beast decided to smash his stubborn head. In that moment, Zhou Yi resigned himself to the idea that nothing would go his way. Yet he knew this was his final opportunity. With a sudden jerk, hurled the red crystal toward Eileen. Immediately after, it crushed Zhou Yi under its massive foot and roared wildly, mocking him as nothing more than a weakling. Then, the monster's attention shifted. Beneath its foot, it noticed a young man still alive, ensnared by a purple filament. "Looks like Mr. Red Monster is in trouble," it mused, realizing that the web was linked to that very girl. Meanwhile, Eileen expressed her gratitude that Zhou Yi had risked his life to deliver the enchanted crystal into her hands. At that moment, a purple web began to encase her completely. As the monster swung its hand, it too became ensnared by the binding thread. Seizing the opportunity, the girl tugged at the web, causing the beast to lose its balance and collapse to the ground. Summoning the spider sword, she leapt to end the battle once and for all. But the fight was far from over. The red monster, still very much alive, sneered that humans remain feeble despite their powers. With a swift motion, it shattered the spider sword in half and then grabbed a terrified Eileen by the neck. In the next instant, the beast viciously impaled her, splattering blood everywhere. Zhao Yi slowly rose to his knees while clutching his wound. In the distance, the monster still stood, and Eileen hung limply, its tentacle tightly coiled around her. With despair etched on his face, Zhao Yi realized the situation was utterly catastrophic. The creature coldly regarded Eileen, and suddenly flashes of red light erupted around it, as if something explosive were happening. Blood, perhaps? The monster flinched. Its body became stained with ink-like marks, its arms bearing deep impact scars. And then, in a startling turn, its limbs were severed. Zhao Yi's eyes went wide in shock. He never expected such a twist. At that moment, a tall man with long hair appeared, carrying the injured Eileen in his arms. Soon, more figures clad in identical high-tech armor joined the scene. The monster, frowning, demanded, "Who are you?" Armored fighters emerged. One cradled Eileen, whose condition was dire. A woman with long white hair halted as she noticed a body on the floor, inspecting it as if evaluating its damage. After examining the fallen figures, she commented that their internal organs, bones, and muscles were nearly obliterated. The gravity of the situation was evident in her tone. She then retrieved a green crystal and announced that she would begin treatment immediately. Introduced as the captain of the 10th Extermination Squad, she took charge of the situation. A man with red hair still holding Eileen reassured everyone that no monster would be able to harm them. He was known as the captain of the 2nd Extermination Squad. A third man chuckled, declaring that he would personally have fun with this monster. Introduced as Commander-in-Chief Carrie William, however, he was soon cautioned that this foe was no ordinary creature and needed to be approached carefully. In response, Carrie merely flashed a broad smile, claiming he was special too, clearly not taking the threat seriously. The white-hailed captain, irritated, ordered silence, insisting that calm was essential for her healing process. Raising the green crystal and focusing intently, she activated her healing ability as the crystal began to emit a powerful, vibrant green light. The energy seeped into the ground, triggering a potent spell. In response, enormous flowering blooms erupted before them, their petals forming protective cocoons around the wounded, and even Joey found himself within one of the flower cocoons, surveying the scene in astonishment. Surrounded by the unexpected warmth and the gentle embrace of the blossoms, he felt his wounds begin to mend, as if bathed in the soothing comfort of a hot spring. Suddenly, the cockroach god appeared and unleashed a piercing scream that sent a shock through Joey. He cried out in pain, and in the distance, a white-hailed girl remarked in surprise that it shouldn't have hurt so much. The little creature smirked and advised Joey to watch the battle closely, promising him a real spectacle. A man in armor then introduced himself as Carrie Villian, commander of the Annihilation Squad, and suggested that the creature should speak. The red-skinned monster replied with a disgruntled glare that it did not negotiate. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the two opponents faced each other, their eyes locked without a hint of retreat. Suddenly, streams of blood began to cascade down the walls. The armored man looked up warily, waiting for the situation to escalate further. As the blood continued to flow, the tension mounted until the monster declared that it had already devoured all of its brethren who were present. Surrounded by crimson torrents, the creature ominously proclaimed that everyone here was doomed to die. Then, laughing menacingly and waving its tentacles, the monster prepared to launch its next attack. Zhao Yi was stunned by the sight of numerous bloodied monsters. The towering fighter assumed an attack stance. With a simple swing of his arm, he generated a wind slash that shattered one of the blood monsters. The wind then coalesced into a tornado, forming a protective barrier around the injured members. Any blood monster that tried to approach was instantly disintegrated by its force. It became clear that this giant functioned as the team's tank, while the white-helmed woman served as their healer. Zhao Yi marveled at their unique abilities, even as a lone swordsman faced off against the primary blood monster outside. The blood monster declared, "Since those two are on guard, I'll finish this off first." But then, out of nowhere, both of its arms were shattered. The creature was caught off guard, and before it could recover, Carrie had already positioned himself behind it, following his initial assault. Enraged, the blood monster grew 2 additional heads and increased in size. Carrie remarked, "I really envy you. You can grow any part of your body, but what about your brain? Can you sprout one to outgrow your dumb nature?" Infuriated by the insult, the monster launched a punch at Carrie. With only a slight movement, Carrie dodged it gracefully. The monster then unleashed a flurry of punches, yet Carrie continued to evade them effortlessly. Roaring in anger, the beast haunted. "What are you, a monkey?" While dodging, Carrie maneuvered above the monster, momentarily leaving it suspended in midair. Seizing the opportunity, the monster lashed out with a tentacle and laughed, convinced its victory was assured. But Carrie merely smirked, grasped its sword's hilt, and slashed the creature into multiple pieces. One of the severed heads, still twitching, seemed to exclaim in astonishment, "What just happened?" Without a word, Carrie flicked his finger, reducing the quivering monster to dust. In its final moments, the creature revealed its true form, a small parasitic entity with a brain and several tentacles. Carrie carefully stored it in a small glass container and shouted excitedly, "I caught a tentacruel Pokemon!" He then called out to his comrades, "I've captured the monster. Let's have a Pokemon battle." The white-hailed woman scolded him sharply, "You're not a kid, you must hand the creature over to the Research Institute." Joey observed everything in disbelief, amazed at their strength. The cockroach god then interjected, "Now you see the difference, right? You might even pass out soon." Sometime later, in a different room, Joey awoke in a bathtub, startled and naked. "Why am I naked?" he wondered. A sound from the adjacent shower revealed a blurry figure resembling a woman. Joey blushed as he was embraced, not understanding the unexpected intimacy. Irene slid the curtain aside, surprised that he had finally woken up. Completely unclothed, she left him no choice but to cover himself. Without missing a beat, she explained, "Normally you'd be locked up for the night, but your genetic test results haven't come in yet. Since the prison is severely damaged, I have no choice but to take you back to my place to care for you." Unable to form a coherent thought, Joey stammered, "Don't you need to close the curtain? You're completely naked." Irene replied matter-of-factly, "The hot water is here now." She then properly introduced herself as Irene, the deputy captain of the first killing team, and thanked him for his previous help. When she inquired about his name, the young man, still embarrassed, mumbled, "I am Joey." Shortly thereafter, she told him to make room as she stepped into the bathtub. Desperate to avert his gaze, Zhao Yi clutched his modesty. But Irene called him over, instructing him to turn around so she could inspect his wound. As she touched his back, a shiver ran down his spine. This was the first time the single hapless loser had ever felt the warmth of a woman's palm. Pleased to find no visible scars or wounds, Irene deduced it was due to his unique ability. As she continued to examine him, his heartbeat quickened. Suddenly, the cockroach god materialized and announced, "His heart rate has reached 120. Prepare for a massive surge of sex hormones. Do you need to switch to breeding mode?" Shocked, Zhao Yi quickly protested, "No, for the worst." Irene remembers that Zhao Yi also got a chest injury from that monster. Zhao Yi understands what is happening, and to make matters worse, Irene points at her chest and says as she remembers, he got injured there. The close sight of her milkers boosts every hormone in his body by 1,000,000,000%. Then the cockroach god appears and says breeding mode has started and the countdown begins from 5 seconds. With no other choice, Zhao Yi rushes out of the bathroom. This confuses Irene. Zhao Yi finally gets a cooldown for now. He can't believe that his system was just about to awaken his wild animal. For some reason, the television is on and live reporting is underway. It says, "There's a new abyss formed in Waki High City caused by a series of incidents. Every human in that area was killed by the monster while the monster-killing team was sent there to take control of the area." Zhao Yi thinks, "It's the place I used to live as a human. Everyone's dead, meaning I would have died too if I had survived that monster attack." The cockroach god then appears and says, "You don't need to think about the world situation right now, as I have good news for you. Your fatty friend's resurrection bar has reached 100%, but Zhao Yi is a little surprised. The cockroach god explains that as long as the king remains alive, his subordinates can be resurrected as many times as needed and they can upgrade along with him. Zhao Yi presses the resurrection button, and suddenly the screen glitches, and from it pops out the fatty cockroach, and it cheerfully comes out and says, "Brother, I missed you so much." But soon, depressed by his brother's new appearance, it says, "Brother, you look so ugly now." At this comment, Zhao Yi gives him a pitiful look. The cockroach god says, "Now Fatty can fly," and Zhao Yi, by closing your eyes, can see through Fatty's vision. Fatty demonstrates this by flying through every small space in the room and soon reaches the bathroom where Irene is present. Zhao Yi communicates with Fatty telepathically and anxiously shouts, "Why are you flying there? We come out." Fatty wants to show him that he is a great spy, but soon enough, Irai's spider senses catch it, and by using her purple web, she kills it. Surprisingly, Zhao Yi also takes damage. The cockroach god forgot to tell him that when he shares his senses with Fatty, he will sustain the same damage too. And this, Zhao Yi died too. And here's the manhwa ends. Thank you for watching this complete manhwa. Make sure to subscribe if you watch till the very end, 2,000 years later. The next day arrived quickly. Zhao Yi looked at the test report in front of him, feeling somewhat nervous. He had no idea whether his genes had been contaminated by cockroaches. Fortunately, Irene reassured him, saying that his test results were completely normal and that he was now free. Holding the report, Zhao contemplated for a long time before speaking seriously. He wanted to join the extermination squad. Irene, however, was skeptical and reminded him that the squad had an extremely high mortality rate. Even if he had some abilities, it wouldn't be enough. Zhao Yi countered by questioning whether ordinary people didn't also have high mortality rates. He emphasized that he was an awakened individual and had even fought alongside Irene before. Now that his background was confirmed to be clean, he urged her to give him a chance. Seeing Zhao Yi suddenly act so formally, Irene studied him for a full minute before finally laughing. She told him that the squad selection tournament held once every 4 years would take place in 7 days. While his abilities were decent, this year's competition was rumored to be the toughest in history. Zhao Yi protested, reminding Irene that they had fought side by side and had already seen each other at their most vulnerable. He cheekily suggested that she should at least try to help him, implying that she wasn't the type to ignore someone who had saved her life. Amused by his shameless persistence, Irene stood up and declared that she admired his audacity. She decided to give him a special training opportunity. Meanwhile, the squad leader, who had been observing everything, smiled knowingly. A researcher beside him asked why he had been instructed to forge Zhao Yi's test report, as it had indeed detected non-human elements in his genes. The squad leader simply responded that everything was under control and that they should let things play out. After securing his special training opportunity, Zhao Yi and a group of people arrived at the entrance of the abyss. He was shocked to learn that the so-called training involved directly entering the abyss itself. He protested, pointing out that the abyss was teeming with monsters far stronger than those outside. Rumor had it that even an entire team entering had only a slim chance of survival. Moreover, his teammates were just 4 young people: Lu Yao, Justin, Sukai, and Song Tao. The Abyss, a vast network of pits formed by space-time worms during the Great Cataclysm, connected to different realms of consciousness. These realms were categorized into 6 danger levels, ranging from level 1 to C class. The higher the level, the stronger the monsters and the greater the rewards. Irene explained that this particular abyss had already been mapped out by the extermination squad. As she operated the controls, a large gate gradually opened. She informed the team that after eliminating monsters within the abyss, they would obtain magic crystals which could enhance their weapons. She then assigned Justin, who had prior experience leading abyss expeditions, to lead the team. As her voice faded, the next moment the group found themselves in a mysterious forest. The environment was called Silent Jungle, classified as a Level 1 danger zone. Zhao Yi, stepping into the abyss for the first time, was astonished by the experience. After passing through the wormhole, he found himself in a brand new world. Suddenly, a creature with the body of a monkey and the tail of a snake leapt down from a tree, startling Zhao Yi. At the same time, a massive spider appeared before him. The surreal sights of this new world completely shattered his previous understanding of reality. As Zhao Yi gawked at his surroundings, like a clueless newcomer, the other team members remained indifferent. The group then set off on their exploration. The captain led the way with his sword while the others guarded their surroundings. Only Zhao Yi was left trailing behind. Seeing that he wasn't doing anything useful, the others simply dumped their bags on him and ordered him to carry the team's supplies. They even forbade him from engaging any monsters, telling him to stay at the back and focus on logistics. Since the number of monsters was limited, fewer people fighting meant more experience points for the rest. Zhao Yi, surprised by this arrangement, found it unexpectedly favorable. He readily agreed, promising not to touch a single monster and dedicating himself to his new role as a porter. His unexpected enthusiasm left the team momentarily speechless. He even called out to the others, urging them to hand over all their backpacks. When no one responded, he approached Lu Yao and offered to carry hers as well. At this point, Zhao Yi still didn't understand why they were keeping him from fighting. As an ordinary person, he assumed he had nothing to lose, but he would soon realize the truth. It turned out that the golden stone weapons used by awakened individuals not only killed monsters, but also absorbed their energy, similar to gaining experience points in a game. The more monsters one killed, the faster they leveled up. As a result, monster hunting had become a resource to compete over. After an hour of fighting, the team had slain over 300 monsters, barely managing to level up. However, Zhao Yi was different. Possessing a devouring ability, he spent his time leisurely roasting meat while the others struggled in battle. As his teammates continued to fight, he passively gained more and more traits: poison resistance, jungle adaptation, solar cleansing, and many others. Lying back with a satisfied burp, Zhao Yi jokingly told the others to stop fighting because he was too full. At that moment, he secretly made a decision. Even if he did end up joining the extermination squad, he would only enter the logistics division. Watching everyone else exhaust themselves while he simply ate and grew stronger seemed like the best possible path. Praising the so-called Great Cockroach God, Zhao Yi cheered for its power. The rest of the team, however, was dumbfounded. They were putting their lives on the line, fighting monsters, yet Zhao Yi was feasting in the background. The captain, who had been holding a grudge against Zhao Yi due to his ambiguous relationship with Irene, continued to target him. Meanwhile, deep in the silent jungle, the dungeon boss, the heavy execution beast, was battling the serpent-tailed monkey king. With just a single strike, the boss effortlessly defeated the king of the monkey tribe. Hiding in the shadows, Zhao Yi was astonished by its overwhelming power. According to the system's data, the two creatures were only half a level apart, yet the gap in strength was immense. The captain reminded the team of their plan. If they followed it precisely, they would be the first rookie squad to successfully take down a boss. Hearing this, Zhao Yi's expression darkened. Before entering the abyss, Irene had explicitly warned them that bosses were not part of the training. Engaging a boss without permission could result in severe injuries or even death. Zhao Yi hesitated, reminding them that boss fights were outside the training scope. However, the captain dismissed him outright, calling him useless and telling him to stay in the designated safe zone and guard their bags. Without warning, the captain struck Zhao Yi, forcing him to comply. Liu Yao, standing behind him, seemed conflicted but remained silent. Seeing no reason to argue, Zhao Yi simply walked away. He had no interest in fighting anyway. His ability to absorb monster traits meant he would eventually surpass them all. There was no need to get into unnecessary conflicts while he was still weak. As he left, two of the team members exchanged sinister looks. At that moment, Liu Yao could no longer hold back and spoke up. She realized that the location the captain sent Zhao Yi to was exactly where they planned to ambush the boss. The captain confirmed it with a cold snort, adding that he had also packed the force supply bags with explosives. Once the boss reached the spot, he would detonate them. With an unmistakable grudge in his voice, he declared that sacrificing the team's useless baggage would make their boss fight much easier. Liu Yao was horrified, protesting that it was far too ruthless. While Zhu Yi hadn't contributed in battle, it was their own rule that had kept him from fighting. The captain, however, raised his sword to her throat, telling her to drop her naive sentiments. He warned that he would tolerate her objections only this once. Meanwhile, Zhu Yi reached his designated location. However, as soon as he arrived, the ground began to shake violently. He barely had time to react before hordes of terrified monkeys started fleeing in his direction. Realizing something terrifying was approaching, Zhu Yi prepared to defend himself, only to see the monkeys completely ignore him and keep running. Moments later, the sound of trees cracking apart echoed behind him. Turning around, he found himself face to face with the Abyss boss. Before he could react, a massive venomous horn pierced through his body. Blood spurted from his mouth as he was sent flying, crashing through countless giant tree trunks before finally stopping against a massive boulder. Lying there in a daze, Zhu Yi couldn't understand why the boss was here. Wasn't this supposed to be a safe zone? Just then, a system prompt informed him that he had sustained a fatal injury and that emergency repairs on his body would begin immediately. But before he could even process that, a flaming sword suddenly struck his fallen backpack. The moment it made contact, a violent explosion erupted, revealing that his supplies had been rigged with explosives. Watching the raging fire, Zhu Yi finally understood. He had been set up as bait. From afar, his teammates watched the explosion unfold. The captain laughed maniacally, mocking Zhu Yi's final expression before the blast consumed him. He instructed the team to wait until the dust settled, then finish off the weakened boss and claim its power. However, Liu Yao noticed something unusual. She urgently pointed toward the explosion site. Within the fading firelight and thick smoke, a figure slowly emerged. Zhu Yi was still alive. His eyes glowed eerily, and his torn clothes had vanished, revealing bronze-colored skin beneath. The captain stared in disbelief. Zhu Yi, gripping the boss's venomous horn with both hands, suddenly yanked it from his body. Before long, the gaping wound on his back began to heal at an astonishing speed. Zhu Yi's eyes burned with fury as he glared at the people standing on the cliff. Without hesitation, he lifted the massive monster and hurled it toward them, roaring, "Did you really think I was that easy to bully?" Betrayed multiple times, Zhu Yi finally understood. Only by becoming strong enough to make others fear him, could he ensure that no one would dare to trample on him again. When the monster's sharp horn had impaled his body earlier, he couldn't comprehend why his own teammates had tried to kill him. They had entered this trial together with no direct conflicts of interest, so what kind of grudge or hatred could have driven them to betray him? It was their first time meeting, after all. Yet in that moment of crisis, the latent power he had absorbed from the snake ape's long arms was triggered, granting him a sudden surge of strength. He forcefully pulled the monster's horn from his body, and with the help of his undying cockroach trait, his wounds rapidly healed. He then lifted the gigantic creature and launched it at the people on the cliff. "You can all go to hell!" The impact shattered the mountainside, sending debris flying. When the dust settled, the survivors slowly opened their eyes, only to see a trembling hand reaching out for help. "Captain, save me! Help!" The freckled youth, Song Tao, screamed desperately, but the others didn't move. "You're beyond saving, Song Tao," the captain declared coldly. "Don't blame us." Turning to the remaining members, he barked, "If you don't want to die, focus on killing the boss." Without hesitation, he drew his sword and activated his skill, Bloodburst Blade. Immediately, Song Tao's body turned bright red, rapidly swelling before bursting into countless blood swords that pierced the monster's body. Roaring in pain, the beast entered a blood fury state, standing up and howling toward the sky. Seeing this, the rest of the team didn't hold back either. The bespectacled man raised his palm, summoning raging flames, while Liao's staff emitted a cold blue light. The next moment, a bolt of lightning struck the monster, temporarily paralyzing it. "It's weakening! Everyone, use your full strength!" the captain sneered. "This so-called dungeon boss isn't as powerful as the rumors say. If that useless fool Zhou Yi could throw it at us, how strong could it really be?" Seeing that the situation wasn't as dangerous as he feared, the captain charged forward with his sword. But at that moment, something changed. The monster, infused with both lightning and fire attacks, began to glow. Its massive horn absorbed both elements, rapidly regenerating its injuries. The captain's face twisted in horror. "The heavy execution beast is absorbing our energy. Stop using elemental attacks. It's only getting stronger." Fully recovered, the monster loomed before them, its powerful aura sending chills down their spines. The captain realized they had no hope of winning this fight. His mind raced. He needed a way out. A ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. "Not all of us need to escape. Just me." Without warning, he struck the bespectacled man, knocking him unconscious. "I don't need to outrun the monster. I just need to outrun you," he muttered. Before Liu Yao could even react, the captain delivered a brutal punch to her abdomen, rendering her defenseless. As mages, their physical endurance was weak. There was no chance of them resisting a close-range attack from a warrior. "You should feel honored. Dying here for me is the best use you two could have." Without looking back, he turned and ran. The monster, still enraged from the attack, stomped down mercilessly on the man who had burned it with fire, crushing him into a bloody pulp. Then it lifted its foot again, ready to do the same to Liu Yao. Just as she braced for death, a shadow flashed before her. Zhao Yi. He had saved her. Liu Yao stared at him in shock. "Why would you save me?" Zhu Ye met her gaze, his voice calm. "Maybe because you never bullied me." He recalled how, back when they first formed the team, everyone had dumped their bags on him, except Liu Yao. Looking back, Zhu Ye realized that he had always been treated as disposable. Because he was weak, others assumed it was only natural for him to be the sacrifice, the bait, the one left behind. Even when he became the immortal Cockroach, he had been thrown into certain death by giant roaches. Now, despite doing nothing to provoke anyone, he had nearly been killed again by his own teammates. A realization struck him. Power is everything. As long as he was strong enough, no one would dare to manipulate or betray him. As he pondered this newfound understanding, a desperate voice called out, "Help me, please!" The captain, who had tried to flee, had been caught by the monster. It pinned him beneath its massive foot, crushing him slowly. Zhao Yi tilted his head, a cold smile forming on his lips. Didn't you tell me I wasn't allowed to fight monsters? How could I possibly save you? The captain's face went pale with terror. Before he could even curse, the monster's foot came down. Blood and viscera splattered everywhere. Zhao Yi watched impassively. Beside him, Lu Yao tried to speak. But before she could, Zhao Yi released a cloud of sleep pollen, knocking her unconscious. Now, only he and the monster remained. The monster growled, turning its gaze toward him. Zhao Yi cracked his neck, flexing his fingers. So, it's just the two of us now. Have you decided how you want to die? He had absorbed the mantis's traits, and he could transform into a tree man if needed. Now, it was time to put those abilities to the test. As soon as the monster finished off the others, Zhao Yi launched into battle. This was it, the final showdown. If he could kill this beast, he would prove himself worthy of the extermination squad. Without hesitation, Zhao Yi lashed out first, using his toad's long tongue ability to latch onto a tree branch, narrowly avoiding the monster's savage charge. And this was exactly why he dared to take on this fight alone. Zhao Yi had absorbed far too many traits along the way, and now was the perfect time to test their limits. Without hesitation, he activated his mantis trait, morphing his arms into scythe-like blades. Leaping from the tree, he swung them down with full force. The sharp scythes struck the monster's shell but failed to leave even a scratch. The impact sent a painful vibration up his arms, leaving them numb. Even an enhanced mantis blade can't break through, Zhao Yi frowned. But every creature has a weakness. If its outer shell was too hard, then what about its underbelly? Shifting his strategy, he aimed at the creature's exposed abdomen. The neck slash tore through flesh, sending blood splattering everywhere. The monster howled in pain, confirming Zhao Yi's theory. Excited, he struck again and again, until the heavy execution beast snapped its bloodshot eyes toward him. Before Zhao Yi could react, the creature twisted its massive body with unnatural speed and rammed into him with its horn. Zhao Yi was sent flying over 10 meters, crashing violently into a stone wall. Blood dripped from his lips, his ribs screaming in pain. How could something this huge be so fast? But his immortal cockroach regeneration kicked in immediately, and within moments his wounds began to mend. The monster, having observed Zhao Yi's evasive tactics, realized that simple physical attacks wouldn't be enough. Its horn began to glow ominously. A massive bolt of lightning shot from its horn, striking Zhao Yi directly. The surrounding rocks and trees exploded into flames, debris flying in every direction. As the smoke cleared, the monster expected to see nothing but charred remains. But what it saw instead made its eyes widen in shock. Zhao Yi was still standing, but he was no longer human. His entire body had transformed into a tree-like entity covered in layers of thick bar. His new form granted him incredible defense and complete insulation against electricity. The monster's strongest attack had been rendered completely useless. Zhao Yi smirked. No matter how powerful a creature is, nature always provides a counter. But while his defense was solid, he still lacked a finishing move. At that moment, an idea struck him. Using his long arm trait, he reached out and grabbed a familiar object, the sword of his former captain. Now the real fight begins. Slamming his foot into the ground, he activated another ability. A web of vines erupted from beneath him, shooting toward the monster. Within seconds, the creature was completely ensnared, its limbs bound tightly. No matter how hard it struggled, it couldn't break free. Holding the massive sword with both hands, Zhao Yi leaped high into the air. With all his strength, he brought the blade down. Then, leaping into midair, Zhao Yi unleashed his strongest strike. But at that moment, the jungle-heavy horned beast let out a monstrous roar, suddenly breaking free from the tree vines. Zhao Yi had no time to withdraw his strength or dodge. Instead, he activated his elastic muscles to enhance his power and forcibly adjusted his attack trajectory. The massive sword collided with the beast's horn, producing a sharp metallic ring. However, the sword's level was still too low. It shattered on impact, breaking into two pieces. Realizing the failed attack, Zhao Yi immediately retreated, tossing aside the greatsword that Justin had painstakingly upgraded. Yet, he couldn't help but let a smirk curl on his lips. The beast roared once more and charged at him. Zhao Yi, now standing his ground with a cold smile, declared, "This fight is already over. I've acquired the ability to defeat you." With that, he devoured a broken horn from the beast, absorbing its sharp horn trait. In an instant, his body transformed, becoming a warrior clad in layered heavy armor. Thus, man and beast engaged in a ferocious life-or-math battle. No one knew how long the fight lasted. The battlefield had become completely devastated, trees shattered, and the ground torn apart. When the dust settled, Zhao Yi sat atop the lifeless body of the jungle heavy-horned beast, exhaling deeply. At that moment, a notification appeared before him. Item obtained. Secret realm key. Zhao Yi had never seen an item like this before. A key to a secret realm? Scene shifted to the training base. A soldier grabbed Zhao Yi by the collar and barked, "3 dead, 1 unconscious, 1 lightly injured. What the hell happened in the abyss? Why are you the only one unharmed?" Zhao Yi originally wanted to brush it off by saying he was just lucky, but even he found that excuse too ridiculous to say aloud. Just then, a hand suddenly rested on the soldier's shoulder. The squad leader, William, stood there, looking utterly disappointed. Is it just my imagination, or does the military think the person recommended by my vice captain is the true culprit? By that logic, wouldn't that make me the mastermind behind this tragedy? With just 2 sentences, William sent chills down Zhou Yi's spine. The soldier paled in shock. That's not what I meant. It's just that the fallen recruits were all military appended, so naturally, William shot a deep glance at Zhou Yi before cutting the soldier off. Enough. No one enters a dungeon expecting 0 casualties. If that's not what you meant, then drop it. Then, turning to Zhou Yi, he added, "This doesn't concern you anymore." Zhou Yi nodded, sensing the special protection from the squad leader. Later that day, Zhou Yi found a quiet rooftop and sat down to reflect. Why did that old man cover for me? Was it just because I was recommended by his vice captain? Whatever, thinking about it won't change anything. Right now, the most important question was, what exactly is a secret realm? At that moment, the cockroach god appeared. Secret realms are hidden spaces within the abyss, the cockroach god explained. Only those with a key like yours can enter. In theory, humans shouldn't be able to obtain such an item, but because your DNA is similar to that of a monster, the abyss registered your battle with the boss as a struggle for dominance between 2 creatures. That's why you received the key. So, in simpler terms, this is a special dungeon that only I can access and grow stronger in? The cockroach god nodded. However, the monsters inside far surpass the difficulty of those in a regular abyss of the same level. Also, you'll have to face the true owner of that key, the being that originally granted it to the heavy-horned beast. Like the mushroom monster you fought before, it's likely a high-intelligence creature guarding one of the abyss's core secrets. Zhou Yi continued. And what about this countdown on the key? If you don't use it within 24 hours, the key will disappear. The cockroach god's gaze was unwavering. So will you go? Xiao Yi looked down at the key in his hand. A decision formed in his mind. Of course I'm going, but before that, I have one unfinished business to take care of. The next day, Joey found Vice Captain Irina and dropped to his knees begging for a date. Such a bold and sudden request was naturally met with a swift, brutal kick from Irene's long legs. You dare flirt with me? Say that again if you've got the guts. Joey, face calm despite the pain, looked at her and repeated, "Go on a date with me." Before he even finished speaking, Irena's fist came crashing down, making him spit blood. Yet, no matter how much she beat him, he remained persistent in his request. Finally, when Irene's fists grew too tired to move, she glared at him. "Say that one more time, Joey, unwavering," declared. "Even if I have to say it 10,000 times, please go on a date with me." At that moment, Irene saw something in his eyes. It was a look she had seen countless times before, the same determination of warriors who, before facing death, sought to fulfill their final regret. Realizing this, Irene burst into wild laughter. "A date? Fine, I accept." Cut to their date, the two spent the day strolling through the city like a pair of love-struck teenagers. They shared a drink, watched a not-so-scary horror movie where Irene remained unfazed, while Joey curled up in fear, and even visited an amusement park, taking pictures together. As the sun set, Joey finally completed his first ever date. "I planned this for 20 years. Every single detail was mapped out. The only thing missing was a girl to actually do it with." He sighed contentedly. "Now I can die without regrets." Hearing this, Irene suddenly stopped in her tracks. I've seen that expression too many times. Soldiers convincing themselves that fulfilling a final wish makes dying okay. Her voice softened. "I don't know what you went through in that dungeon, or what you're planning next, but stop thinking about dying without regrets. The only way to truly live the life you want is to keep living." Joey hadn't expected such words from her. Irene continued. "I hope next time you'll have the courage to ask me on another date, not as a final wish, but because you actually want to." That night, Zoe returned to the rooftop, staring at the secret realm key hovering in midair. The key suddenly shattered, and in its place, a portal to the hidden space appeared before him. Without hesitation, he stepped inside. The moment he crossed through, he found himself in a terrifying, ominous forest, the darkest woods. Emerging from the shadows was a colossal, snake-tailed monkey, its danger level classified as Guardian tier. Joey's pupils shrank. The monsters here are this powerful? Without a moment's hesitation, he activated his sharp horn trait, encasing his body in layers of reinforced heavy armor. Then, in a single step, he launched himself toward the monstrous foe. The moment Joey entered the secret realm, he activated the heavy-horned beast's innate ability, fully arming himself before engaging in battle with a giant gorilla. At first, he had the upper hand, using his Kirin vitality to land powerful blows and inflict serious damage. Just as he was about to strike a fatal blow, aiming for the back of its head, a massive hand suddenly grabbed him. There were more of them. Before Joey could react, he was surrounded by a troop of giant gorillas. In an instant, one of them clutched him tightly and then ripped him apart. His upper body was thrown against a tree, while his lower half disappeared into the undergrowth. Yet Joey did not die. With the immortal cockroach ability, he activated sleep pollen, covering the battlefield in a thick haze. The pollen numbed the monsters while also concealing his presence. Within that brief window, his body began regenerating, and soon his torso reconnected, allowing him to stand up once more. "Damn it," he cursed. These gorillas are even stronger than the heavy-horned beast, and there are too many of them. If I didn't have the immortal cockroach trait, I would be dead already. Realizing that fighting them head-on was impossible, Joey recalled his experiences in the abyss. If this place was similar, there must be creatures that countered these gorillas. Determined, he dispersed the pollen, but doing so exposed his location. The gorillas charged at him again. Joey activated his high jump ability, leaping away, but his speed was still far slower than the gorillas. Caught mid-air, he released corrosive slime, dissolving the grip of his captor and breaking free. At that moment, he finally saw what he was looking for, a massive spider web, with 2 gigantic spiders patrolling their territory. These were giant venom spiders, apex predators of the jungle. Without hesitation, Zoe activated his feather trait, allowing feathers to sprout from his body. Within seconds, he was gliding toward the spiders, seeing an airborne threat. The spiders let out a warning hiss, but as soon as Zoe landed on a tree near them, they calmed down. Looks like I successfully mimicked their natural enemy. Just then, a furious roar shook the jungle. The gorillas chasing Zoe had run straight into the spiderweb. No matter how they struggled, they were trapped, and their frantic movements only tightened the web's grip, leaving them completely immobile. Above them, countless spiders descended, ready to feast. The spiders injected venom, and soon the gorillas' bodies began dissolving from within. Perfect, Zoe smirked as he turned his attention elsewhere. Suddenly, a pack of snake-tailed monkeys charged into the battlefield, attacking the spiders. The spiders, unwilling to be outdone, launched a counteroffensive, turning the jungle into a full-scale war zone. Just as planned, taking advantage of the chaos, Zoe activated his mantis blades and targeted isolated monsters. 3 creatures fell with a single slash. He continued, ambushing stragglers, balancing the fight between the 2 warring factions. As monsters fell, he began absorbing their abilities. But suddenly, something went wrong. Why isn't it working? At that moment, the cockroach god appeared. You idiot. Did you think just biting a creature would give you its powers? You need to eat the right parts. Each monster's abilities come from a specific organ. The cockroach god marked the creatures on the battlefield. That monkey, its power comes from its strong arms. You need to eat its shoulder muscles. Standing now, Zhou Yi adjusted his approach. Upgrade snake ape arm, giant serpent ape arm, venomous, tail stinger paralysis, venom. With his power drastically increased, none of the remaining creatures were a match for him. After a long battle, Zhou Yi arrived at a massive stone cave. Cockroach god, what's inside? The aura here feels overwhelming. The cockroach god's tone turned serious. That's the domain of the secret realm boss. It's extremely dangerous. Near the cave, Zhao Yi noticed a strange pile of stones, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't stones, it was a mountain of skeletons. At the top, something glowed ominously, a crimson gemstone. Zhao Yi approached and picked it up. The cockroach god spoke. That's a secret realm gem. It can only be found in the graveyards of secret realm monsters. It's an ultra-rare magic crystal that has absorbed the residual power of countless fallen beasts over thousands of years. This stone contains an immense amount of energy, the cockroach god continued. You have 2 choices. You can absorb all of its power at once, massively increasing your strength, or use part of its energy to tear open an escape portal and leave the secret realms safely. Otherwise, your only way out is to defeat the boss. Zhou Yi looked at the glowing stone in his hand. If he saved half of its power to open a portal, he could escape. But after everything he had endured, after all the monsters he had slain, all the abilities he had acquired, was he really going to walk away now? Having achieved his goal of increasing his strength, Zhou Yi faced a critical choice. Should he retreat while he still could, or risk everything for another battle? Secret realms were rare opportunities. If he backed down now, he might never get another chance to absorb the boss's power. The future wouldn't offer him a second chance to regret. He hadn't even seen the boss yet. How could he be scared off so easily? It wasn't as if he couldn't escape if he lost. He could always make his decision after fighting. Thus, Zhu Yi finally stepped into the depths of the secret realm, prepared for an all-out battle against the boss. Inside the cavern, a massive creature sat calmly on a distant throne, its cold gaze fixed on Zhu Yi. Even with the system scan, Zhu Yi couldn't see its level. The sheer pressure of its presence was overwhelming. The heavy-horned Beast King narrowed its eyes in amusement before speaking in a deep, chilling voice. A human, I can sense that you have slaughtered my people. Another talking monster? Could this creature also be part of the mysterious organization Zhou Yi had encountered before? Was it referring to the heavy-horned beast from the abyss as its people? Zhou Yi remained silent, observing the situation. But the beast seemed to lose patience. Gripping its weapon, it suddenly lunged forward. A blindingly fast spear thrust tore through the air, collapsing the ground beneath them as it struck. But what shocked the beast was that Zhou Yi had changed form mid-battle. To improve his agility, he had activated his long-armed ape trait and dodged at the last second. The beast's eyes narrowed. Human, tell me, how did you enter this world? The connection between your world and this one hasn't even been established yet. Zhou Yi's mind reeled. The connection between worlds? Was this monster saying that the secret realm would eventually merge with Earth? Could this be the real reason behind the monster invasion? Seeing that Zhou Yi still refused to answer, the beast-killing intent surged. If you won't talk, then I'll make you. Without another word, the beast launched an onslaught of attacks. Its strength and speed far exceeded Zhou Yi. Within just 2 exchanges, Zhou Yi was sent flying, blood spraying from his mouth. The beast spear pierced his abdomen, hurling him against the cavern wall. A gaping wound tore through his stomach, yet within moments his body healed itself at a speed visible to the naked eye. The beast's expression shifted slightly. What are you? No human can regenerate like that. You're more like one of us. A cruel smile spread across its face. Interesting. I almost want to cut you open and study you. Don't worry. I'll let you live, at least until you tell me your secret. The spear came down again. Zhou Yi activated his dynamic vision trait. The weapon, which had been moving at impossible speed, now seemed slowed down in his vision. Though his opponent was overwhelmingly powerful, its attacks were simple and direct. Maybe he had a chance. Zhou Yi dodged and countered, releasing corrosive slime from his hand. If he could absorb the boss's abilities, he could turn the tide of battle. But before he could strike, a massive palm smacked him aside, sending him crashing to the ground. Damn it! The beast tossed away its spear, muttering in annoyance. This thing is too clumsy. My fists will do just fine. It rushed forward, unleashing a blazing barrage of punches, its speed comparable to a master martial artist, tenderizing meat. Zhou Yi was pounded mercilessly, left sprawled on the ground, barely conscious. The beast sneered. How amusing. No human could survive this beating. You're definitely not one of them. Yet Zhou Yi still wasn't dead. His elastic muscle trait had dispersed most of the impact, preventing fatal damage. The beast's cold gaze flickered with interest. Enough games, tell me your secret, or die. Zhou Yi had no intention of answering. He had only one way out. He had to devour the beast's flesh to gain its abilities. Just as the spear was about to pierce him again, a mysterious armor suddenly manifested on his arm, blocking the attack. It was the strongest armor plate from the jungle heavy-horned beast, a defensive trait capable of repairing itself. Even so, the beast's flaming attacks were melting through the armor. Zhou Yi gritted his teeth. If I stay here, I'm dead. The cockroach god urged him to flee. This fight is impossible. Activate the secret realm gem and escape. But Zhou Yi refused to back down. During a brief opening in the battle, he darted behind the boss, activating his long-armed ape trait to transform into a massive ape. Yet the beast instantly countered, blocking his attack and smashing him into a stone pillar. Then, the temperature soared. Flames erupted from the beast's spear, forming a terrifying magical array. It moved at a speed Zhou Yi couldn't comprehend. He dodged, but the flames chased him like living creatures, burning his leg as he leapt away. Activating Immortal Cockroach, Zhao Yu prepared to heal. But this time, the flames prevented his regeneration. For the first time, his undying ability had failed him. If he couldn't regenerate, his greatest survival advantage was gone. The beast grinned. Die, human. Despite being engulfed in flames, Zhou Yi refused to surrender. His eyes blazed with determination. I won't die here! Activating the heavy-horned beast's spear trait, his arms transformed into giant horns, and he charged straight at the boss. I won't stop here! The horns slammed into the boss's head, cracking its helmet but failing to penetrate. The beast grabbed Zhou Yi's arm, its eyes filled with mockery. That's it? A fist, wreathed in endless flames, slammed down. Zhou Yi was swallowed by the inferno. His body burned, his flesh regenerating and charring over and over in an endless cycle of pain. He could neither live nor die. Zhou Yi lay on the ground, consciousness fading. The cockroach god panicked. I can't just watch you die. You can't defeat this monster. I'm opening the escape portal. It grabbed Zhou Yi's secret realm gem, preparing to activate it, but Zhou Yi slapped it away. The gem shattered into pieces. The cockroach god was furious. You fool, do you want to die? Zhou Yi's voice was weak but firm. I came here fully prepared to die. If you want to use the gem's power, don't waste it on an escape portal. Use it to make me stronger. The gem's strange energy enveloped Zhou Yi, his aura surging. A terrifying pressure spread through the cavern. A golden radiance exploded from his body. The beast's eyes widened in shock. What? What the hell is this power?